Alrighty, so I want to get right into topics, and I think that it's probably important that we start with this one, because it's kind of funny, but you know how the GOP, as of right now, has been targeting trans people a lot, and there's been whisperings about getting rid of gay marriage, but nothing that is, like, solid, nothing that can be solidly pointed to as what we should be worried about. There is one aspect of the GOP that I want to go ahead and throw issue with, because right now, Trump seems to be wanting to decriminalize or at least reclassify a particular drug that has been a lot more popular across the nation recently, and that drug is marijuana. And now I am demonetized on this video. And if you want to stop me from getting demonetized on videos, I don't think I'm actually demonetized. I'm kidding. But I do have several channels which I talk about other things on. I have Suris Live, where you're going to see less focused discussion on things. There's also the Third Space Arcade, which is a podcast that I am starting. First episode is recorded and is currently in the editing room, and that has me with guests Proton John, also known as Claire, and Anthony, and I do not remember how to pronounce his last name. I wanted to say Gramigula, but he told me that was incorrect when we were on the podcast because I'm terrible at names. That said, that should be starting soon because the first episode is recorded. And also I have Suris MTG. There we go. That's everything. That's the shilling out of the way. Let's go ahead and see how evangelicals are talking about this, and then let's get into why this is even worth talking about at all.
Conservatism and Christianity are not the same.
Right.
And so we have this libertarianism that has infiltrated the conservative movement, so to speak. And so there comes a place where ultimately what we decide in terms of policy has to be aligned with biblical truth. And you know, we talk about the nature of drugs, and the Bible speaks to this issue. And it is...
The Bible speaks on marijuana and cocaine? What? That's new for me. I did not know that. Do continue.
Opening up our children and of course others to demonic activity.
What? Please tell me the verse. Please tell me the verse where it says that taking a weed will open you up to demonic captivity. Also, just letting you know right now, there are some weird people, especially in my chat, who are going to hear that, and they're not going to think, oh no, I should avoid it. They're going to think, oh yeah, demon daddy.
Destructive behavior. And, you know, it's one thing people choose to do it. God gives us a choice. But when government puts a seal of approval on it, it only expands it. Conservative.
Okay, so he's not technically wrong. When the government says it's okay to do something, you are going to see, even if it's just in the beginning, an influx in more people feeling like they can do the thing. Now, there are situations where the inverse is true, like with abortion, where the government says you can't have an abortion, and then suddenly we have like 2 years of more abortions than we have ever in the past. Weird how that works out. So, generally speaking, though, you are right that when you tell people, hey, you can now do this thing, there's going to be a few people who do it en masse in the beginning, and then you're going to see the opposite will happen, though. Things start to peter out. And the reason they start to peter out is with all drugs, regardless of how addictive they are, the real issue boils down to what they are being used to do. Usually they're being used as a coping mechanism for one thing or another. If they're being used as a coping mechanism for chronic pain, it's likely because of a failure in the medical industry to address that chronic pain. If they're being used as a way to alleviate their mental health, it's because there's a failure in our social areas in regards to mental health. Like, it's being used as a band-aid to patch up other issues. Anytime I see somebody using drugs recreationally, it is either yes, recreation, or no, it's being used as a coping mechanism, and saying it's recreational is only cope. It's perfectly reasonable to want to do them, especially because we live in a fucked world. I'm not going to take that away from anybody. But freaking out and saying that this is going to be the second coming of Satan is weird to me, but I want to look at the history of why we even think about drugs the way we do right now, why we demonize them. Now, again, I'm not saying that there are not very, very dangerous drugs. Crocodile is a very good example of it. If you don't know what it does, it makes your skin flake off in chunks. There are dangerous drugs that people ought not take, and we should have regulations on. But this borderline zero tolerance policy that the United States has had historically when it comes to drugs comes from one simple area: racism. And you may not agree with that. You may think that I'm being very, very stupid when I say that. Oh, look at that stupid liberal. Everything's racist. You call everybody you don't like a Nazi. But hear me out. Hear me out, because I'm talking about Nixon's aid. Now, this is not Nixon's aid, but
this was the moment that the thing was going to blow wide open.
I told the president about the fact that there was no money to pay these individuals to meet their demands. He asked me how much it would cost. I told him I could only make an estimate that it might be as high as $1 million or more. He told me that that was no problem. He also looked over at Haldeman and repeated the same statement.
This was the first time that a White House staffer had ever contradicted, with criminal consequences, contradict a president on live television.
There was also maintained what was called an enemies list, which was rather extensive and continually being updated.
The idea that the White House draws up a list of enemies and is prepared to use the agencies of government, this is very, very serious, scary stuff.
now, this is not new. This is not strange. This is something that Trump has been doing now. But let's continue.
John Dean talked about a list of enemies that was compiled at the White House. One, Arnold Picker of United Artists, described as a top muskie fundraiser. Second, Alexander Barkin, the national...
Once the enemies list was revealed, Daniel Shore, a CBS News correspondent, is reading off this, and he reads his own name.
17th, Daniel Shore of the Columbia Broadcasting System in Washington. The note here is a real media enemy.
I remember thinking at the time, what is going on? Is this really believable?
You're fully aware, Mr. Dean, of the gravity of the charges you have made under oath against the highest official of our land, the President of the United States.
Yes, I am.
And being so aware, do you still stand on your statement?
Yes, I do.
When I'm finishing my testimony for the Senate, I read it and I said, you know, it's my word against Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Colson, Mitchell, and the president.
So, none of that has anything to do with the drug war, right? None of that has anything to do with any of this. Why would I show you that clip? Why does that matter at all? That doesn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form. That's weird. Well, actually, that has everything to do with the topic at hand right now. Because, for those of you who might not know about it already, this is pretty old news by now. But, let's get a quote here. You want to know what this is really all about? He asked with the bluntness of a man after public disgrace and a stretch in federal prison had little left to protect. The Nixon campaign in 1968, and the Nixon White House after that. They had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. Now, okay, who is this quote from? Who is the one that we need to talk about this? Well, this is John Ehrlichman. And John Ehrlichman was the aide to Nixon. And he pointed out, notice how the aide before pointed out that Nixon had an enemies list and they went after those enemies. So, how do you go over and attack the anti-war left and black people once you have noted that they are on your priority for your enemies list? How do you do that? Well, let's quote. The Nixon campaign had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We know we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana, you know, the hippies, the love movement, the one that was very against the Vietnam War, those hippies, we get the hippies associated with marijuana, and we get the blacks associated with heroin, and then we criminalize both heavily. We could then disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders. We could raid their homes. We could break up their meetings. We could vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. So, Seeing the evangelical right freak out about the Trump administration or any administration flirting with the idea of decriminalizing or at least reclassifying some of the drugs that during the Nixon era were put under scrutiny, not because of the danger of those drugs, but because of the dangers of the thought leaders that they were arguing against, that they could use the drugs as weapons against. When the evangelical right is freaking out about losing access to that weapon, it's not about demonic influence. It's not about freaking out that the demons are going to take over. It's none of that. Not even a little bit. They are freaking out because one of the weapons that they've been able to use against minority groups for years might be taken away. And shocker of all shockers, it might be taken away by one of the guys who they've advocated for from day one. If we do actually get marijuana reclassified, that would probably be a good thing, especially for people who feel like they need to use it, especially for things like chronic pain. Sure, or people who just use it recreationally. However you want to use it, I am not going to judge you for it. I just think it's really funny, the kinds of people who freak out about it. Because, like, on the one hand, there's the parents who are going to freak out about it and go, oh no, they're decriminalizing this thing. They might be decriminalizing this thing. Oh no, that's bad because something children. But make no mistake, the people who freak out about that on the parental side, they're rubes. They are people who have been convinced by a media empire that they should respond that way. But that media empire was built ages ago. That media empire was built by people like Nixon. Now, granted, this was not the first time that marijuana was used as something to argue against and be considered terrible, right? This has been happening since Reefer Madness. And if you don't know what Reefer Madness is, okay. If you don't know what it is, it's this film right here. The entire film is available on YouTube right here. But the point of it
could be the deciding factor in our fight against it.
The entire point of it was to be a massive propaganda film against weed. And this film is from the 30s. It is a thing that is far prior to the Nixon campaign. So what did Nixon do? It wasn't a new thing to be against marijuana, but by starting the war on drugs and ramping up the way the United States felt about those drugs, he was then able to use that to attack people. And evangelicals love nothing more than having minority groups that they can attack and say that they are better than.
Marijuana is grown in every state in the Union. Recently, in the city of Brooklyn, New York, a field of marijuana was found behind a tenement court. The weed was here being cultivated, regularly stripped and dried and sold in schools and at government army posts in and around New York.
Now, if you want something a little more interesting than the propaganda film, though, of course, the propaganda film is certainly funny as hell, there is something way more interesting that you should see. And that is the Reefer Madness musical. Because people in Hollywood, people who have any amount of influence, people who are not stupid, recognized that this film was propaganda, and as we as a community of people have started to get more lax about how we feel about that stuff, we've looked back on those propaganda films and realized just how fucking silly they were. For me, in drama class, I actually had to listen to this musical. And let's see here. Can I get the particular bit here? Is it still on YouTube? I think it is. Or I guess it's just going to be the trailer. I mean, that would work.
You have been convicted and sentenced to death by electrocution. Any last words? Well put. Pull the switch. In 1936, a madness swept the teenage world. An evil so insidious, so seductive, that even its name, marijuana, struck fear into the hearts of the citizenry.
Public enemy #1.
Forsooth, fair Juliet.
Are you trying to woo me?
Now, two young sweethearts, Mary Lane and Jimmy Harper.
Hey kid, I'm Jack.
Will be caught up in the path of the evil demon weed.
This isn't that Reefer. I've read about
All the rage in Paris.
Paris?
And drawn into a seamy world filled with decadence,
What a night. I was in more laps than a napkin.
corruption,
Are you putting on weight?
Lately, I seem to be hungry all the time.
good girls gone bad,
Tonight you and me are gonna break out like the measles.
and some very rude behavior.
Shut up, bitch! I feel a little naughty. We'll play with whips and nipple clips and candle wax.
Jack, it's a Satan!
That mug's wound up like an 8-day clock. One too many giggle sticks.
You better put your flaps down before you take off.
That was your tongue! Wait till that Susie Mayberry hears about this.
Kristen Bell, Christian Campbell, Liv Campbell, Alan Cumming, Anna Gasteyer, John Kassir, Amy Spanger, Robert Tordy, and Stephen Weber in the outrageous new feel-good musical comedy of the year.
So yeah, it's definitely pro-weed. So that musical was one that I saw in high school. The sentiment behind how we look at these drugs on the societal level has been changed for years. It's not been anywhere near what the Nixon-level war on drugs wanted us to do, because people, by and large, aren't quite as fucking stupid as they want us to be. But no. Uniquely now, we need to be worried about the kids getting on the weed because Trump might reclassify it. Evangelicals are weird, man. They're so weird. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Blitzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagittarius, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.